So now we are on SQL Node 1. The last thing we did was to install the just to install the operating system and the operating system addition. So what we want to do next is to configure the IP address for it. Make sure we change it to a static IP address. Then after that, change the computer name. So let's log in. So what we need to do here is to configure the static IP address. So cmd, then IP config, then you come to our server manager, click on local server. That is another way of changing the IP address. To start it, click on Ethernet from here, just from the server manager. Then double click this, properties, uncheck IP6, click on IP4, properties, and check this. So let's check what is our IP address. We have 192.168.1.190. So that is what we have here. 192.168.1.190. Enter. Then the default gateway 192.168.1.254. 192.168.1.254. So this is where the trick is. So here we are going to put the IP address of our domain controller of this server here, which is what I've typed here already, which is 192.168. So this one now will be 90. So this one will be 192.168.1.189. So preferred DNS will be 189, and that is what we are going to type here, which is 192.168.1.189. So this is the IP address of our domain controller of this server here. So that is the IP address. That's what you are going to put in your preferred DNS. Then you click on OK. Then you click on close. Close this window. Close all the windows, and you are left with this. So since we've changed this to static IP address, now we need to join this computer to the domain controller. But one thing we can do first is to change the computer name. Let me change the computer name to SQL Node 1. It will ask us to restart it. Yeah, let me do that. Yes, close. Maybe start now. Start completed. Let's log in. So now let's now join this SQL Node 1. Can you see it here? SQL Node 1 running. Let's join it to the domain. So how do we do that? You come to local server. Under workgroup, you click on workgroup. Then click on change. Then here you check domain. So what is the name of the domain that we want to join? sql.com. Then you click on OK. It will ask you for the username and password. So we will type administrator, and the password I've been using. Then you click on OK. Welcome to sql.com domain. That means it was successfully joined to our domain. You must restart your computer to apply the changes. So So let's restart it again. So how do you know? So if I go back to my domain controller here and I click on tools, Active Directory users and computers, it's the computer, the SQL node 1 is rebooting. Then so if you come here, initially we created these users here. So now let's check under computer. What do you see? SQL node 1. So now this computer is part of this domain. That is how you add any computer to a domain controller. So the same thing we are going to do for SQL node 2. So when you log in as administrator initially, you need to add those users that we created on the domain as an administrator on this server. So how do we do that? You come to tools. So don't forget we are on SQL node 1. Come to tools, come to computer management. Then you go to local users. So click on group. Then under group, double click on administrator. Then you click on add. So who do we want to add? We want to add Olu, check names. So it's asking me to log in Olu at sql.com. Then the password. So then check. Okay. Then who else do we want to add? We want to add the SQL admin. SQL admin. Check name. SQL admin at sql.com. Then the password. So we've added apply. Then click on OK. So it's now part of the administrator on this server. Then now I can log out as an administrator. Sign out. Now I will now log in as my user. Click on other user. Olu at sql.com. Can you see? So this is the username that we created on this domain. That is what I'm using to log in to my SQL node 1. Because the SQL node 1 is now part of the domain controller. Now we are logging. Now I'm logging to my SQL node 1. So the next thing I need to do now is to install the Windows Failover cluster. But before I do that, let me configure my SQL node 2. So I click on start. So I'll select my Windows Server image. Click on next. Install now. Select Windows Server 2019 Data Center Evaluation. Desktop Experience. Click on next. Next, accept. next, custom, next. I'm going to pause the video for now while the installation completes. Now the installation of SQL Node 2 is completed. So we give it our administrative password, admin. So let's log into our SQL Node 2. Like I said, the first thing you want to do is to install the guest addition. But before I do that, I want to quickly first of all change the computer name so that I can restart both at once. Change SQL Node 2. Close. I'll say restart later so that I can install the guest addition. I think. Next. Install. Reboot now. Yeah, now the start is completed. Let's log in. So after logging in, like I said earlier, you need to configure a static IP address for SQL Node 2 as well, the same way we did for SQL Node 1. So let's do that. I'll come here, IP CMD, and type IP config. So this will show us the IP address that was automatically assigned by the VirtualBox. So then you come to your server manager, come to local server, click on IP4, double click Ethernet, properties, disable 6, click on IP4, then click on properties, use this IP address. So then you now come to your, we have 192.168.1.191. So 192.168.1.191. Then the subnet mask, that's fine. Then we have the default gateway, this is it here, 192.168.1.254. 192.168.1.254. 192.168.254. Then, like we did when we configure the node 1, we have to put in the domain controller IP address. So let's go to the domain controller. This is DC. So let me minimize this. I can easily come here. Then I type IP config. So the IP address of the domain controller is 189. So I'll go back to my node 2. And here I'll tap 192.168.189. Then click on OK. Close. Then I'll close this too. Don't forget, we need to disable the firewall. Turn network off. Now after doing that, then we need to join our node 2 to the domain controller. So watch out here. Here we have only node 1 connected to the domain controller. This is our node 2. So you click on workgroup, change, then check domain by SQL.com. Okay. The username is admin administrator. Can you see? Welcome to the SQL.com domain. Okay, it must restart. Restart now. So if you come back to your domain controller and we refresh, can you see? Now we have SQL node 1 and SQL node 2 connected to the domain controller. So let's log in to our SQL node 2. First of all, I will log on as an administrator. So this is to enable me add the users I created as member of administrator on SQL node 2. So I'll come to computer management, then local user, group, administrator, add, at sql.com. Check. sql.com. Yeah, okay. Then I'll add the SQL admin at sql.com as well. Okay, click on OK, apply. Okay, now I can log out. and now log in as my username. So I want to log in as to the domain now. Click on other user. SQL.com. So at this point, you can see that I have all my 3 Windows Server system running. I have the domain controller running, the SQL Node 1 and the SQL Node 2. So this is the domain controller. Then this is my SQL Node 1 and this is my SQL Node 2. So what I need to do now is that the configuration for the domain controller is completed. So I need to now work on these two servers. So the next step I need to do is to install a feature called Failover, Windows Failover Cluster. And to do that, you click on Add Goals and Features. Next, next, next. Click on Next. And at this point, you select Failover Clustering. Next. It starts destination automatically. Then click on Install. So this is on Node 2. Go back to Node 1 and do the same thing. Add goals and features. Next, 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 next. Select Failover Clustering. Add features. Next. Start the destination. Then install. So now we are installing Failover Clustering on both servers. So we have to wait for the installation to complete. The servers are restarting. The installation is completed. Now the start completed. So let's log into our servers. Let me log into Node 2 as well. So as you can see, the installation is completed successfully. So we can close this. Let's go back to our Node 1. Close this as well. Now, we now need to configure the cluster. Let me minimize this. Let me minimize this as well. So don't forget, this is our two node, Node 1 and Node 2. So I will come here, come to search and type Failover. So Failover Cluster Manager. Click on that. You can ignore this. So as you can see, there is no cluster here. Because we don't have any cluster environment yet. So we have to create one. Right click and say create cluster. Click on next. So we need to enter our server names. SQL Node 1. We'll say browse SQL Node 1. Check. Yeah. Say OK. Can you see SQL node 1? That is this computer. Then we browse again for SQL node 2. Check. Yeah, that is it. Okay. So now we've added our 2 nodes. So if you have more than 2 nodes the same way, just add it here, then click on next. So it's asking you yes if you want him to do a validation check. So just say yes, let it do that, then click on next. So it's going to run all tests recommended. Click on next, then wait, click on next. So the system is going to validate if the networking and everything is well configured. So the validation is completed. We only have a warning. Assuming we have an error message, we have to fix the error message before we continue. But since it's just a warning, click on finish. So you have to give it your cluster a name. So I'm going to give it SQL cluster. Then you have to select a special IP address for your cluster. That's 192.168.1. The last IP address that we use for the SQL node 2 is 192.168.1, then 191. So I'm going to use 192. It has to be unique from the three IP addresses we've used before. So I'm going to use 192. Click on next, then next. Now the cluster installation is completed. You just click on finish. So this is our cluster, SQL cluster.sql.com. So this is it. If you expand this, you will see the rows. We don't have any rows yet because we've not installed SQL. By the time we install SQL, we are going to see the rows here. Nodes. This will show us all the nodes that are connected. So this is SQL node 1 and SQL node 2. So now the next thing we need to do is to install SQL Server on both machines. Then note that we only need to do the cluster configuration on one of the nodes. It will automatically apply to the second node, which is SQL node 2. So now let's do our installation of SQL Server. I will minimize this. Don't forget the name of our cluster, SQL cluster. So let me minimize this. Here, come to network. Okay, now you cannot access that. In order to be able to access a folder on my PC, I will come to the virtual box manager, select node 1, settings, then click on shared folder, click on folder path, folder. So this is the folder where I have my SQL Server installation download. Select the folder, click on auto mount, then click on OK. Now go back to SQL node 1. Do the same thing for SQL node 2 as well. This PC, refresh. So you can see when you go to this PC, You go to this PC, you can see the folder we mounted now, software. Double click on it, and this is my SQL Server 2022. Right click, copy. You can paste it on your download folder. Paste. And download folder. Do the same thing on SQL Node 2. Double click, developer edition, copy, download, then paste. So now we have successfully copied SQL. So at this point, we can now start the installation of our SQL Server. Open the folder, the installation file that we copied earlier. Right click, run. So click on installation, new SQL Server standalone installation. Click on that. So like I said before, I'm installing developers edition. Click on next. Asset, and click on next. Just click on next. Okay. So since this is just a warning, just click on next. So we don't want to configure and uncheck. Next. So here you are going to select what you want to install. I always do like this, select all. After selecting all, then I remove the ones I don't need, like machine learning and master data service, those. So I will leave the rest and click on it. Don't forget, the same way the same configuration that you install on node 1 is also what you need to install on node 2. Then click on next. Leave the default instance and click on next. So if you remember the other username that we created, this is where the user comes to play. So you click here, select browse. So SQL admin at sql.com. So check for it. Yeah, it's there. Okay. So just copy it and paste. Then here, type the password for the SQL admin. And change this to automatic and click on next. Here select mix mode, give it a password, add current user, which is the Olu that we created. Click on next. This place also click add current user, then next. Just at this point, just click on next, next, then click on install. It is going to take about 5 to 10 minutes for the installation to be completed. So while node 1 is installing, I will go to SQL node 2 and do exactly the same thing. As you can see, install successful. So you can click on close. We don't need this anymore. Close it. So we also need to install SQL Server Management Studio. Copy it and paste it in the download folder. Install. So while this one is installing, do the same thing on node 2. Now the setup is completed. Then we can click on close. The next thing is to set up the installation for always on. So you come here and type SQL Server 2022 Configuration Manager. Click on it. So the first thing you need to do is to set up. Click on the SQL Server Network Configuration. Open it. Then for the name pipes and TCP, these two will always be disabled as default. Change it to enable. How do you change that? Double click on it. Yes. Apply. Okay. Okay. Do the same thing for TCP IP. Apply. Okay. Okay. Then come to SQL Server Services. Come to SQL Server. Double click on it. As you can see, always on availability group. Click on it. Then you see enable always on availability group. So this is, if you remember very well, when we created the cluster, this is the name of the cluster, SQL cluster. Just enable it, apply. So any changes made will be saved. However, they will not take effect until the service is stopped and restart. So that means we need to restart our SQL Server service. So click on OK. Okay. Now, when I click on SQL Server, then I say restart. So this will restart the service before the new configuration that we did will take effect. So that is done. Then we can close this. Then open SQL Server Management Studio this time around. You can just type SSMS. Yeah, SQL Server Management Studio. So don't forget, I'm on node 1. I'll connect to my management studio. Now I'm connected. Now let's create a database. Right click, say new database. Let's call our database test DB. Click on OK. Yeah, our database is created. I want to create a table now. So this script is going to create a table on our newly created database, and is also going to insert the following records: that is successful, let's refresh. So yeah, everything is here. So before we configure always on, we need to take a backup, a full backup of our database, and also take the log backup. So to do that, we right click, then we go to task, say backup, and remove, add. So let's browse to the share folder that we created so that we can access it, that we'll be able to access our backup from node 2. Test db underscore backup dot bak. Okay, click on OK. Then let's do a backup of our log files as well. Backup, remove, add. Nope, sorry. We have to change this to transaction log. Then add. From backup, paste db underscore log dot crn. Click on OK. 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 So completed successfully. Now we go to our node 2, which is this. Then we go here and restore the backup. Say restore database. From device. So we select our backup. Select both the backup and the log backup together. Click on OK. OK. then go to options, select restore with, you can see we have recovery here, no recovery. Click on that, then click on OK. Click on OK. So our database is now showing that restoring. So then we go back to our node 1. So at this point, go to always on availability. If I click on it, select new availability group wizard. Click on next. Give it a name, test PVHA high availability. Next, select it. Click on next. Automatic failover, yes. Readable, do we want our secondary to be readable? Yes, we want the secondary node to be readable. So where are we replicating our node 1? So we need to add node 2, which should be our secondary. Click on add replication, connect to your node 2, click on connect. So this will be our node 2. We want it to be readable. And click on next. Select join only. Since we are already taking the backup and we will restore it on the second node, so we are only joining the first node to the second node and we want it to synchronize. That's what we are doing here. So this is just a warning. Click on next. Then click on finish. More details. This will show you the process. This will show you the progress. As you can see, the wizard is completed successfully. Now click on close. So if you refresh this server, then come to always on availability group. So this is the availability group that we created. So let's go to node 2, refresh the server as well. So first, let's check the database. If you remember, the database, when we restore the database, it was showing restoring. Now it's showing synchronized. So if you come to always on, you will also see what we created, the test DB high availability. So this is the secondary node, while this is the primary node. So this is synchronizing with what we have on this server. So as you can see, if you come to node 2, you will discover that we have 8 apples in our tables. So I want to add 2 more records on node 1. Let me do insert and you will see the effect on .2. So if I execute this query, this is Apple 9 and Apple 10. Execute, 2 records inserted. Let's go to node 2 and execute our select statement. So you can see now we have 10 records. So this automatically syncs immediately. So you can as well create a listener for your cluster, for your connection string. So to do that, come here, go to your high availability group, then right click on always on, click on add listener. So give your listener a name. I'll give it test connection. Then the port number is 1433. Then DHCP, say static IP. Then click on add. Then select an IP address that we've not used before, 192.168.1. I think the last one we use is 191 or 192. So I will use 194 for this. Click on OK. Click on OK. So now let's connect to our listener. Connect. This time around, let's use the IP 192.168.1.194, which is what we use. Connect. So as you can see, now we are connected to the listener. So, but how do we know which of these nodes the listener is connected to? Is it connected to node 1 or is it connected to node 2? To do that, we right click and go to properties. Okay, so as you can see, it's connected to SQL node 1. Okay, let's do something. Let's fail over to SQL node 2. Come here, go to failover cluster manager. So click on SQL cluster, go to rows, click on the cluster we are working on. If you see owners node, SQL node 1, which is the primary, right click on it and say move select node. So just select node 2 and click on OK. So automatically this makes node 2 our primary and node 1 our secondary. So let's go to node 2 and confirm that. Login. So if I refresh this server, then I come to always on availability. Can you see node 2 is now the primary? So let's go to node 1 and check. Let's refresh the SQL node 1. Let's expand it. Come here. now you can see that SQL node 1 is now the secondary. So if we refresh our listener, let's check which node is now connected to. Now if I click properties, so as you can see, our listener is connecting to SQL node 2. So that's just how to set up always on high availability on SQL Server 2022. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly subscribe to our channel. I will be doing more of this video like this. I will also be setting up exactly what I just did now on Azure, and for you to be notified, kindly subscribe. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.